Hey guys, how's it going? Srey here. So back with another video, and today I want to talk about Dehaka. So to start off, will straight off the bat that Dehaka is pretty solid. He's really good and competitive, and that's mostly due to his really strong laning. But he's also quite good in Hero League and Quick Match, whatever, and that's due to his global power. Obviously, his global is even better and competitive because you can coordinate it with your team, but it's also quite good in quick match or hero league or whatnot, um, because you can just get back to base to heal, or you can go and force objectives, and it really allows you to force things and make things happen. So let's start with his abilities. Q is a short range. It's basically a stun. It's better than the stun, except for the fact that it can be interrupted. So it's a short range pull, and it has a bit of a cast time, and you can pull your target in a direction, and they're stunned for 1.75 seconds. That's actually a very long CC. Mirrodin stun only stuns for Stormbolt only stuns for 1.25. This is 1.75. The only downside is that it says if you are stunned or silenced while using drag, the effect ends. But even if you're hit with a Tychus grenade, something that doesn't stun or silence you, it'll still interrupt it. So pretty much anything that interrupts your movement, aside from I think root, will cancel the stun. The second ability you have is Dark Swarm, and this is basically just you press W, and for 3 seconds you do damage around you. The important thing is that it lets you move through heroes, so it makes it so that it's very hard for enemy tanks to body block you if they're trying to gank you. So that's important to note. So if you're trying to get away, you want to save it for when you're going to get body blocked, and then you can use it. Burrow prevents you from taking all damage for 3 seconds, or for 2 seconds, sorry. And this, it can be good, but the big thing here with Burrow is that you can't exit it early. So I just want to say before I go into any more changes that Dehaka is expected to get some significant changes that will buff him. And the two main waves that I've heard is that his adaptation at level 10 um, will heal you for 100% of the damage instead of 60%, and Burrow will be you'll be able to exit it early. So that those will both be just those two changes alone are pretty substantial, but it doesn't really change the way he's played at all. So you want to use Burrow to avoid something like Kael'thas's Pyroblast or Nova's Precision Strike or some kind of burst damage. You can also activate Dark Swarm while you're in Burrow, and it'll do damage as well. And you can also activate your passive, which is the most important part of Dehaka. And basically, um, once minions die and heroes die around you, enemy heroes, you gain essence, and once you have any kind of essence, you can activate it, and you can hold up to 50 essence. So once you have 50 essence, it's going to heal you for approximately 60% of your max health. That is quite a lot, especially since Dehaka's tank is a tank and he has a lot of health. So you want to make sure that before you go into fights, you try to have as much essence as possible. Hopefully you'll have 50%. But that's not, or 50 stacks, sorry, but that's not to say you should only activate essence when you have 50 stacks. So when you're laning, and you don't want to have to back to base, I mean, you could back and just dig back in. You want to make sure that you, I mean, you can use essence collection just to kind of recover some health. Now, Dehaka actually has a fourth basic, or a fifth basic ability, I guess, because his passive isn't really a passive, and his mount, he doesn't have a mount, he has a dig instead. So using Z here will dig to any bush in the map and allow you to teleport there with a 40-second cooldown. 40 seconds is actually quite short. So when you're in lane, you can basically back anytime you want in lane, and you can have total control over top lane because even if you take any damage, you can back and dig right back into the fight. It's a very short 40-second cooldown. So the global is the most important part of the Dehaka's kit, and basically what his abilities do here is his W gives him wave clear to push out the lane, and to split push very effectively. His passive gives him a lot of health to tank during fights, and his Q gives him CC for his allies to follow up. So you're going to dig in, pop your W, and then you're going to pull an enemy and kind of just create confusion amongst the enemy team. You usually want to dig along their backline and go for one of their carries. And once you get 10, you'll also have isolation available, which we'll talk about in a few moments. So let's move on to talents. Actually, before we move on to talents, I just want to say what kind of comps you should be in. So you should be picking Dehaka in double tank comps almost always. The reason for this is he's very bad solo tank, and the reason he's a bad solo tank is because he has basically no peel. If you compare him to like ETC, who can knock back, who can slide, who can give attack speed, who can heal his allies with groupies, he doesn't really offer anything except for his 15-second drag cooldown and his 1 minute cooldown isolation, which is kind of CC. So he doesn't really have any CC, and in addition to that, he doesn't have any gap closing. So you can say that he obviously digs, right? But now, right now, the enemy team's going to know, and they have about a second or so to know where he's going to come from and to avoid the pull and to CC him. So he's actually very vulnerable alone as a solo frontline hero. So he should always be accompanied by at least another melee hero. So at least like a Thrall or an Alrak or a Sonya or at least something, even if it's not a dedicated tank. But he should be played with a dedicated tank. So ETC, even like Chen would be fine, Muradin, Johanna, Stitches, etc. You want heroes that can go in with Dehaka. He can also be good on any map. Obviously, he's better on larger maps because of his global ability, but he's still perfectly fine on maps like Tomb of the Spider Queen. Don't be afraid to pick him on small maps. And maps like Dragonshire and Braxis, which are also relatively small, he still is exceptionally good on because globals work so well to either gank or hold the cap really well. So let's move on to his talents. At level 1, you basically have one option, maybe two. So Enduring Storm is bad. It gives you basically two procs of Spell Shield, which is only 50%. And if that's against like a Sylvanas who's Lost Soul W procs 5 times and within 2 seconds, it doesn't really do any damage reduction. So the effectiveness that you get from this ability is very low. Enhanced Agility is a bad choice because it gives you 15% movement speed, but it takes a long time to stack. And once you get 13, the only options you have really here are movement speed. So both of these movement speed, they don't stack with Enhanced Agility. So if you get Swift Pursuit, for example, you only gain 20% movement speed in bushes. You don't gain 35% as you would if Enhanced Agility is stacked with it. So the agility you gain at level 1 is basically useless. So now you have Primal Aggression and Tissue Regeneration. So Primal Aggression is really, really strong and fits Dehaka's playstyle really well. So the level here is set to level 1. Let's toggle the minions. I'll get Primal Aggression, and you'll see. Actually, let me reset the talent first. So I'll show you what the wave clear is like without Primal Aggression. I should have turned off Arthas. Probably can, but so this is without Primal Aggression. Okay. So it's gonna take a while to clear that. So let's reset. There we go. Wave's gonna hit, and you'll see that it's much, much, much faster wave clear. So the minions are basically all dead, and remember that Arthas probably wouldn't be tanking the wave, so you'll be able to clear it even quicker. Okay. Alright, so Primal Aggression gives you insane wave clear, and as you scale up during the game, that's going to clear even quicker. So if we set the level to, say, level 20 here,
choose a talent.
Primal Aggression, toggle the wave, it's going to clear even quicker than it did at level 1 because of scaling in Heroes of the Storm. So the other option is Tissue Regeneration. We'll just see here how fast we clear. So you can see that it clears the entire wave in 1 W. Alright, so the other option here we have is Tissue Regeneration. So this gives you up to 50 health regeneration per second. Okay, that is a lot of health regen. Compare that to Regeneration Master, which provides 30 per second at max stacks, plus the 500 base health. It gives you a ton of health regeneration. So this can be an option if you feel like you really don't need the wave clear. But again, the wave clear is very strong, and it also increases the duration of Dark Swarm by 0.5 seconds. So from 3 to 3.5. So it gives you a little bit more damage in team fights as well against heroes. But it also works on minions and mercenaries. So it lets you take out camps effectively. You can actually solo knights and solo the ogres with Dehaka if you take this talent. You cannot solo the camps if you don't have this talent. At least, I mean, you can always solo them, but it'll take you a really, really long time. So Tissue Regeneration works by stacking Essence. So once you've accumulated, you have to actually stack quite a bit here. So it's basically, you have to stack it up 10 times, and that's going to give you 500 Essence, which is quite a lot. One minion wave gives you about 14. So it's going to be quite a lot of essence. It's stacked fairly late into the game. I want to say 12 minutes plus, maybe 10 minutes if you're stacking really well on a double lane map. But it's going to take you quite a while to stack up this tissue regeneration. But once it is stacked, even just like a little bit early game, like for reference, at level 1 here, Dehaka has 5.27 health per second. So if you just get one stack of this, so if you get 5 health per second, you're already almost doubling it. And you should have no problem getting um, 5 per 5 regen. So if you just go mid to clear the first wave of like a Dragon Shard, and then you dig top, which is a strategy you should always do. You should clear one wave and then you can dig to get a little bit more extra stacks. You're already looking at 28, which is half a stack from the first wave. So it doesn't take um, too long to get any type of stacks at all. It'll just take a while to stack all of them together. But I'll still recommend Primal Aggression basically every time. So at level 4, guess I gotta set the level again.
Choose a talent.
Okay, so at level 4, we have 4 options here. Lurker Strain gives you stealth when you burrow. So this is bad because the enemy team is always going to know where you are, because after you come out of once you burrow, you're going to come out at the exact same spot. So if you're going invisible, they're like, oh yeah, he's on the exact same spot, and we'll just kill him when he comes out of the stealth. Numbing Eruption is bad because obviously enemies know exactly where you are, and they'll just not stack on top of you. Now this might be a viable talent next patch when they make it so that burrow, you can activate burrow anytime, not just after the full 2 seconds. This might see some play, but we'll see. One Who Collects increases the essence from minions by 50%, and Hero Stalker increases the essence you gain from hero takedowns, which are like hero kills or assists, by 150%. So you're obviously getting a lot more, like a bigger percentage increase from Hero Stalker, but there's a lot more minions around the map to collect. So I personally like Hero Stalker, and I would recommend it every single time, no matter what. So what this does is you get 10 essence from a takedown on a hero kill, which means that after 2 kills, you get 20 essence. And I said that the full 50 essence gives you 60% regeneration of your max health. So if you get Hero Stalker, each takedown gives you 25 essence. So if you get 2 kills, or you get any kills, you basically have resets on Dehaka, which isn't something that you usually think about, but he's going to be regenerating his entire health if he's killing the enemy team. Even if he gets 1 or 2 kills, that's a huge amount of regeneration. If he comes into the fight, if he digs into the fight with full essence, 50 essence, the enemy team gets him down to half, he pops Essence Collection, and then he gets a couple kills, he pops Essence Collection again, gets another 60% of his health, and then let's say that next patch Adaptation is viable and it heals for 100%, then all that damage you took is being healed as well. So he has incredible amounts of sustain and health, and he also has Burrow. So he's going to be getting a ton of health regeneration in fights, and this talent, I think, just allows you to turn fights, whereas the One Who Collects doesn't really. Like, if you're in lane and you already have 50 essence, this talent doesn't do anything. But Hero Stalker will always be good because you can proc it in fights. So 7 is where you have some choice. Essence Devourer is just bad. It just gives you some essence when you get globes. It's not good. So you have Feeding Frenzy, Constriction, Symbiosis. So I personally like Feeding Frenzy because of the amount of cooldown reduction it gives. It's 1.5 seconds per auto attack. So in case you don't know, when you drag, you can actually auto attack during the drag duration. So as you can see, I can pull this, and I can auto attack while it's pulling. So you can stand in the same spot as well. So basically what this does is it significantly reduces the cooldown of drag. But the thing is that in fights, you're probably going to be getting hit a lot anyway, so it's going to be hard to just stand there and auto attack sometimes. And if you're in a really coordinated play, Constriction would be really good because the extra 0.5 seconds, I mean, it's from 1.75 to 2.25, which is a pretty significant increase for the duration on drag. So if you're in coordinated play, the extra drag duration works out really well to help you burst down targets a little bit faster. And if the enemy team just has a lot of melee, then Symbiosis is going to be really good. So remember that every time Dark Swarm hits, it damages the hero, reduces the cooldown. But Dark Swarm hits, I'm fairly sure it hits more than once per second. So let me just double check really quick. So it says 132 per second. No, it's not per second. Okay, so it hits, I think, I don't know why it says 130. This is actually a bug in the tooltip. It says 132 damage a second, which means it should tick 3 times, but it clearly ticks more than that. So it should, I think it should say um, ticks like every half second or something. Anyway, the point here is that Symbiosis will tick more, will reduce the cooldown of Dark Swarm by more than 1.5 seconds if it hits a single hero. So it's actually going to significantly reduce the cooldown of Dark Swarm when you're in team fights and there's enemy heroes around you. And so if they have a lot of melee, you'll get a lot of value out of Symbiosis. So these are the 3 options you can take. Any of them are perfectly fine. Dehaka doesn't have the best talents in the game, but these talents are all pretty good. I think level 7 are his best options generally. So let's say that we take Constriction. All right, so level 10, you have Isolation and Adaptation. Isolation is a very, very powerful heroic ability, especially since it's on a 60-second cooldown. It can effectively take an enemy hero completely out of the fight. So if you cast it, like Isolation on enemy Uther, for example, I mean, the silence part isn't even important. It's the fact that he can't see heroes for 6 seconds, and he won't be able to cast D-Shield on any allies unless they're standing directly on top of him, which, especially in Hero League or Quick Match or something, is very unlikely. So this basically does a ton of damage, silences them, and for the 3 additional seconds after the silence, they're also blinded as well. It's a 6-second blind. So this has a lot of uses aside from just the 3-second silence, and you might not be able to see the impact it's having because it's hard to kind of really know the full effects because they can still do everything they would normally for the most part when they're blinded, but it's going to impact each player individually because each player is going to react differently to being blinded. But even if you forget the blind, it still is a 30% slow and a silence for 3 seconds, and it still does quite a bit of damage. So it's still a really, really effective ability. So you basically just want to cast this on. You can use it to zone a tank out. Like if you cast it on Mirrodin, he's not going to know where to go. If you cast it on Uther, he's not going to be able to heal anyone. If you cast it on like a Vala, the Vala is basically zoned out of the fight because she doesn't want to overcommit because she doesn't know where she wants to go. If you cast it on Li Ming, she's probably just dead because the silence means she can't blink. So it has a lot of uses and it's very, very strong. The only thing is that it's a bit of a delay when you cast it, so it can be a little bit tricky to hit, and the range is quite short as well. The other option you have is Adaptation, and I wouldn't recommend this at all, ever. Um, over Isolation. Next patch, this is apparently getting a buff, so maybe we'll see some play, especially if the enemy team has a lot of damage. But unless they even have a ton of damage next patch and this heals for more, I still think that Isolation is the better option. All right, so level 13, Whirling Dervish is crap. I think even if the enemy team has a ton of CC, like unless they literally have each hero on their team has significant CC. Like they have an Uther, a Tyrande, a Kel'Thas, an ETC, etc. They have a lot of CC. I wouldn't recommend this talent. This is basically a really bad Relentless for those of you that remember what Relentless is. It also doesn't reduce the duration of silences or polymorphs. It only does stun, slows, and roots. So the option I'm going to recommend is Ferocious Stalker. Swift Pursuit can be good if there's a lot of bushes and you're constantly moving through bushes. So like Warhead Junction or Battlefield of Eternity, those could be some good maps for it. But I think that the amount of movement speed you get from Ferocious Stalker is just too much to give up. That's a lot of movement speed, as opposed to just 20% every time you walk in a bush. Remember that when you dig, you'll always be coming out of a bush. This is basically 60% versus 2%. And also this decays over 3 seconds. This is just lasts 2 seconds. But you get 40% more moon speed and it lasts a little bit longer. So I think that Ferocious Stalker is more impactful in most team fights. At 16, again, really underwhelming talents. All these are basically shit. So you have a 50% drag slow, which is okay. Then you have Burrow heals you for 789 health, which is basically 15% of your max health. But this is a 20-second cooldown, so this is shit. And then you have Elongated Tongue, which is, it's so if you look at the normal tongue duration or tongue range, it's not that good. It's pretty short. So if I go here, that should hit. And then if we get the tongue range, it's a little bit longer, but it actually lets you hit quite a bit further. Feels like anyway. So I feel like the tongue duration is the only choice at level 16. I think that if you're always landing your tongues, paralyzing enzymes is going to be better, but that's not realistic. So I think that having the extra range can also surprise the enemy team a lot of the time. I mean, it's fairly, that's not going to hit, I don't think. It's fairly long, so I recommend the extra range. Okay, so level 20, Contagion is bad. It's just not practical. I mean, if you were to hit that every time and always hit 2 or 3 or 4 heroes, then it'd be amazing. But it's very, very rare. The area that it hits other heroes besides the first target is very small. So this is a bad talent. Um, Again, I don't know how this talent will work next patch. Right now, it's bad for the current build. And then you have Apex Predator and Hardened Shield. So Hardened Shield is obviously a fantastic ability. It's always been a fantastic ability, especially on tanks, especially on um, Dehaka, who is pretty vulnerable to burst. He doesn't have any damage mitigation. He has his essence, but he's pretty vulnerable to burst and CC lock. So if you pop Hardened Shield when you dig in, you're basically immune to that, and it gives you another tool to survive. So then you can dig in, then you have Burrow, you have Essence Collection, and you can pop Isolation, or if you have Adaptation, you can pop that. So, and then you have Hardened Shield, and that gives you another option. But the best option here is Apex Predator. So it really accentuates what Dehaka is good for. So if you look without taking Apex Predator, you can see the dig time is somewhat lengthy. Then we take Apex Predator, and it's quicker. It's noticeably quicker. And the cooldown is reduced by quite a bit. So from 40 seconds, it's reduced to 15 seconds. And that lets you basically dig in somewhere on the map, and you wave clear. For example, on Cursed Hollow, you can wave clear. Then after you've cleared the wave, you already have dig back up and you can rejoin a fight. So he becomes very, very, very powerful and very, very annoying for the enemy team. And you really want to make sure that you're fully utilizing Apex Predator once you hit level 20, because that's pretty much everything that Dehaka is about. So overall, a TLDR is Dehaka is a solid champion. I almost a champion. He is a solid hero. He has good CC. He has really good wave clear. He can solo really effectively. He's one of the best, if not the best, solo hero in the game for solo laning. He has a lot of utility. He has a lot of uses. He is one of the best globals, if not the best global in the entire game. And he fulfills the niche of an off tank really well that a lot of heroes don't. He's tanky. He does a lot of damage. The only downside is you don't have a gap closer. I mean, you can argue that Dig is a gap closer, but it's not the same thing in a team fight. It just really depends on where the bushes are in the situation. So heroes that are good at poking and good at kiting are very effective versus Dehaka, and he really relies on all-in engage comps and all-in engage teams, and he really requires his team to follow through with him. If you go in alone on Dehaka, you're just going to get kited and die. You don't have the damage to kill someone on Dehaka. You really need your team to follow up, and that's why I don't really like Dehaka too much in Hero League and Quick Match. Again, he's really good for objective control. He's really good for lane control, and it's really good for setting up ganks. But for really pushing through the fights mid to late game, I find that he's quite difficult to use. And he's also something that is comp dependent. You don't want to pick him as a solo tank. You want to make sure that you're picking him as an off tank or as a double tank. And you have someone with you to go in, and you have someone to follow up with. So if an ETC stuns on your team, so your ETC goes in and stuns, it's really easy to hit the drag. And if you use drag to pull an enemy in, then it's really easy for ETC to stun. And that also works with Malfruit, it works with KT stun, works with Tyrande stun, it works with Mirrodin stun, it works with a lot of heroes, but independently, it's not that strong. So I think that covers everything I want to talk about today. As you can see here, there's actually a bug. It makes him look like he's moving quicker. I think once you get the level 13 talent. I think that's everything I wanted to talk to you about today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time.